Hi there. Good morning, chasers. I said chasers. Hold on a second.
There we go.
Oh, I keep messing this up, putting us, for folks who are listening, we just showed up on the opposite sides that we're used to again. And so that always makes us happy.
Yeah,
I've been,
I don't do well with change, so thank you for that.
right. Good morning, folks. Welcome to Splintered Grace. My name is Bonnie Violet. I'm a transgender queer drag queen who loves glitter on her lips. And my co-host is...
Hi, everybody. It's me, Tina Frank. I'm a mature Christian, conservative Christian woman. I have a lot of different hobbies, but right now, one of the things I've been doing is I've taken up a little bit of painting. So I don't know if I should call myself a painter, but anyway,
Yeah.
I'm aspiring.
You're a painter. You can call yourself a painter.
Okay, well, yeah, I actually painted it, so that makes me a painter, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. So thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. I started out with good morning, Gracers, which is I call in my workshop, I refer to people who are taking part in the workshop, the lacing your narrative. I call them lacers. And so it's like, oh, hey, Gracers, Splintered
That's so funny.
listeners. I don't know. Anyway, so how was your weekend?
Oh, you know what? I had a really good weekend. I worked a lot. I mean, physically worked because we're still working on that property we're getting ready to sell. But let me tell you, my husband's a beast. That poor guy. We're trying to build something in the back, and I'm his only helper. So, needless to say, he did all of the literally heavy lifting and everything else. He's so kind. He didn't yell at me one time. He didn't get short with me or say, "Okay, just step away." None of that. He was just like, "Okay, can you just move to the left or move to the right?" so that was awesome. And we had church on Sunday, which is one of my favorite things to do. And we're talking about miracles right now, and so it was very, very awesome. We're in a new building, and so it's just been really amazing to see all the changes and all the things that are happening.
Nice. Are you about done with your house, or how much more do you have to do?
We're about done. I think we're going to take a little extra time this week to try and take it over the threshold. But yeah, it's, when you start, you have all these ideas, and then you get halfway through and you're like, oh, you want to start taking shortcuts. And thank goodness we didn't do that. We've just taken the extra time to do it right. And so now coming up on the end, to just look at it, it's like, oh, it's so worth it. So yeah, we're hoping that the people who purchase it will enjoy it.
I'm sure that they will.
I hope so. Anyway, so how was your weekend?
I had a good weekend too. Life is like, I would think I was sharing with you before the show. It's just like I'm going live every day, and I have all these little projects that I'm doing right now, and so I feel like I'm constantly in this space of thinking and processing, but I don't know that I've had time to process the processing, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's all good. It's all good stuff. It's just I don't think I'm as used to it, and I think in the long run it'll be good. But it's just been a lot to kind of have discipline every day to kind of get up, do the same thing at the same time, with the same sort of intention. Has been really kind of challenging, and also good, I think.
That's awesome. Well, by the time you're done, you'll have this whole thing mastered, and so you'll be able to just keep going, right?
Right. By that time, I'm sure things will change again.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that's about the time it takes to make a habit. It'll be funny to see if you habitually get up early because you've done it for so long to get ready for your day. That's awesome. I'm glad things are going well. How's your workshop going?
It's going pretty good. I want to say good morning to Zara real quick. I see that you're
good morning.
Zara owns a cafe just down the hill from me in the Lower Haight.
Oh, that's awesome.
International Cafe, and she always is. I haven't been down there in a little bit. I need to try to come see her this week, but she's so great. She's ever since day one I met her, I've fallen in love with her. I think she's fallen in love with me too. It's been sweet.
That's awesome. Good morning, Zara.
A bright spot of my day whenever I get to see her. You had a question about the workshops.
Yeah. How's your workshops going?
I think they're going well. It's interesting with this live stream workshop series. It's kind of an exploration, and it's fairly loosely, it's loose, but it's not in the sense of like people can participate as they want, um, and as much as they want and when they want. And so, it's not like I had like a registration process where like 12 people said, okay, I'm going to do this workshop
Gotcha.
and committed to meet and do this and do that. So it's like I'm just doing these things, I'm setting up, and then people are kind of participating when it's convenient for them.
That's awesome.
So I'll get like a little, it's just very isolated, I guess, in when I'll get to talk with someone about the workshop. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah. Is it a public thing that people can log on to in the national public, or they have to be invited?
nope. It's all live streamed. So basically, every Saturday is like the main workshop, and so that happens every Saturday at 9 a.m. And I go live on all of these platforms, like we are right now.
Okay.
And I even update it. I upload it to the podcast, so folks could also be just listening through it audibly. And then so like I'll have one task for the week. Like the first week we focused on what did religion tell us as a child, and then like this week is like when did our understanding of religion change, and talk about that. And so we focus all week on that type topic. And so each day I go live at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, again in the same places. And I go live for about 5 to 15 minutes, and I'll share kind of a process, like where I'm at in the process. I might share a story. Sometimes I've played music and just kind of had people take some time listening to the music and writing or meditating. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. And then I upload that also to the podcast. So some folks are actually following along on the podcast. I have like 4 or 5 people that are pretty steadily going through that process, which is kind of cool because I didn't know if it would translate well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You always have such great ideas.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the process is like, I think for me, it's the being able to create some of the content, have like the discipline and the structure so that I can begin to create some of the stuff that I've been wanting to create for a while, as well as have people participate.
I think we both struggled with discipline and structure over the years, haven't we?
Definitely. Yes. I've stopped saying that I'm not, like, I've stopped saying that I can't be disciplined because I feel like that's not helpful. I can choose to be more disciplined, and I have been able to like be disciplined at times. But yeah, I tend to like after a certain amount of time, I just kind of lose my fizzle.
Your focus, yeah.
My focus. Yeah, my mom used to say I was fickle. And I believe that's true. Like I tend to like fall out of interest or fall out of love or fall out of curiosity with a lot of things pretty quickly, I think.
It was always good to work on those things. I'm still working on that. I've got a few years on you, but it gets better. I'm getting better and better at that. Awesome. All right. So today we thought we would do something just a little different. Maybe not different, but a little different. We've been talking a lot about buzzwords. I think right now we've got a lot of buzzwords around us. I think every segment of culture or every season of life that we go through, there comes accompanying buzzwords. Some of them I think have even made it into the dictionary. I was hearing some of those words that I've had from the past. But I thought it'd be fun if we talked about some buzzwords. I can't even say it. Buzzwords. And we want you guys to share your buzzwords too. We're willing to talk about any of them. I know there's a lot of different genres of buzzwords. So feel free to just open it up. Our goal here is to create an opportunity for us to have a conversation. We're not going to try to change anyone's minds or opinions, but I think it's a good platform for us to all be open and honest with one another so that as we grow together, we can continue to build on our relationship, both us together on live and anyone else who participates after the fact. So anyway, do you have any buzzwords you want to start out with?
Well, any buzzwords to start out with? One of the things I wanted to say I dressed like a bumblebee today.
I noticed that too. I wasn't going to say that, but I didn't know if you did that intentionally.
No, well, it was weird. It wasn't like intentional, but then once we decided on buzzwords, I was like, oh, this kind of works.
It's so funny.
So I was like, I'll be a bumblebee.
All right. Well, next time I'll call you out if I think you're just so I could. But I
Right?
wasn't sure that's what your intention was. So I didn't want to like put you on the spot. That's funny.
That's cool. I think it's why I finally landed on the sweater because I wasn't sure what top I was going to wear. I decided on yellow, so I was like, I'll do some bumblebee stripes.
That's
Um,
awesome. That looks
but yeah,
great.
I remember like when you brought up the word buzzwords, I think one of the questions like, well, what is a buzzword maybe? And so maybe folks who are listening, maybe you have some ideas of that. But I was like, well, what is a buzzword? Um, my first thought when I think of a buzzword, and this is what came to mind, was like a buzzword feels like it might be a label you would put on a word that maybe you didn't find, I want to say validity in, or like you didn't necessarily like, you just thought it was extra, like it was a word that didn't need to be used, or maybe it was just trendy for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Landa Lakes says snackable content, right? We'll see. Let's see where it goes. So snack on some things for sure. Landis probably has some good thoughts on buzzwords.
Probably.
Buzzwords. I
So
just think there's so many places we can go with it. You had a couple, right?
I did have a couple, and for me, I think you're right with on that definition, because coming in the corporate industry, when we were looking for different things to attract attention for clients or whatever, we always had buzzwords that we used to kind of meet criteria. When we worked at the Boys and Girls Club, the two of us, we always had to find the right buzzwords for the grant applications and for those types of things to get in. So there's always been buzzwords or things that you use for different things. But I thought there were some here. Some of these are a little more fun. But I know there's some serious buzzwords out there too that we're happy to share and talk about as well. But one of the ones I hear a lot now, especially from my adult children, is adulting.
Adulting.
Yeah, I see on Facebook say, "Oh, I'm so sick of adulting," and
Mm-hmm.
that makes me laugh. I'm thinking, who'd have thought that would be such a buzzword that people use as kind of an exasperation or a sigh or whatever it is they're using it in? But that makes me laugh.
Yeah, it's usually not like a good thing. It's usually like,
Yeah,
oh, I get to be an adult. Like I have to do the things that I have to do, like pay the
yeah,
bills and go to work.
yeah. Or
To,
actually get dressed to go to work, because
right.
those of us who are working from home don't have to do that.
Well, we just have to dress half
Oh, that's true.
ourselves, right? Maybe just
That's true.
our face. Um, the news loves to use unprecedented.
Ooh, unprecedented.
That is a
Yep.
word that feels like it's been very overused.
Yes, very much
A
so.
lot. Like unprecedented crowds or unprecedented. I mean, I feel like it's used in a lot of ways to kind of just a way of trying to say like this is something new, something that has never been done before. But usually when we're making history in a lot of those things, I hope things are getting, it's not always like that it's better, it's just different, but hopefully it's a sign of progress.
I hope so. Yeah, yeah. You're right. That word is used a lot in all different types of applications.
Well, and news brings up the other word that you brought up this morning.
Oh, yeah. There was one that we heard a lot of for a long time: fake news.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I was so sick of hearing that after a while. Everything was fake news this, fake news that, fake news this. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I still see it once in a while. Oh, fake news. I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you determine fake news?
Well, it's hard because I just feel like there's, yeah, I mean, I think fake news is also put on like, it's like a broad label
Yeah,
on a lot of different things, but I think fake news in and of itself is the idea that the news is not correct, it's not
right.
real. And I think oftentimes the news is just slanted and
Hmm.
isn't like full. It's not like the full truth.
Right. I agree. And I have to tell you, all this fake news stuff, it makes me hesitant. What do I believe and what don't I believe when I see it on the news? Because
Yeah.
there is fake news out there. And you're right. I think there's just enough truth or just enough fake to make the story interesting. And that's something I never thought we'd have to deal with when I was younger. that the news, we could always count on the news. You turn on the local news and you had the person there with the camera watching everything live. It was always like news.
Right. Landis says absolutely everything is called fake news. Maybe it should be called biased news. Yeah.
Maybe it should. I agree with you. So
Yeah.
I think they don't want people to have a heads up, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like that's like the biggest. I feel like that's probably the most accurate, because I think that a lot of the times news stations are looking for a certain story, so they go
Yeah.
looking for evidence that kind of like paints that story versus just, okay, this thing happened, and talk about everything that happened. I think there is like this predetermined idea of why things are the way they are, why they
Yeah.
are the way they are, and then that kind of um, it just limits what you're actually going to find. It's like if somebody's doing a like trying to investigate like a mystery, or like a say a murder, or which I don't like bringing that up, but like if you're investigating something that you don't necessarily know what the answer is, you have to like go down every channel. You have to try.
Right.
You have to interview every person. You have to like look at a lot of different theories or possibilities, rather than just kind of like, okay, I know this person murdered, or this person did it, so I'm just gonna find all the. And I think you will begin to see what you want to see within that, like, I guess in that direction. Not to say you would
Yeah.
even like make stuff up, but it's just that you would just see kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really makes it challenging, though, to find real news. If everything that we're seeing is biased by the writer or by the publication or the media outlet, then that means that all of us, based on what we're looking for, are going to get only a portion of the news that's
Mhm.
biased one way or another.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Yeah.
So
And
that makes everything fake.
I wonder how long, because I think there's some validity in labeling things like that. Like, I think it's been, like, again, I think there's so much of just illuminating
Yeah.
things that have been there all along. And I just wonder how much of news has always been biased,
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
has, like, has I don't know, has always been this way, just in the way that we're seeing so many things more like blatantly, like it's undeniable. You can't like deny some of the things that are being brought up. um yeah, like it's just becoming undeniable with a lot of
Yeah.
things.
I think it's like you said, there's always been a pick and choose what's valuable to share and what's not valuable to share
Yeah. Well,
to
I
get
think,
the response that you're looking for.
yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've thought too critically about the news before, like it wasn't like, or thinking too critically. Yeah, not that I was a big news person, but I definitely didn't think I had to think critically about it. Whereas I think now that you do, which is probably something we probably should have been doing anyway, is being critical of what it is that we're consuming, what it
Right.
is we're being told, and is there more information. So, like for me, I don't know. In growing, I don't know. I guess over the years, I've just come to know that like just one source probably isn't enough for anything, like, because there's just so many different points of views and perspectives, that it's helpful to hear from a few different folks, and
Yeah.
then kind of decide for yourself what kind of seems to work or sounds correct, which seems weird to do with like facts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
No, I hear you. I know. I remember growing up, Dad was all about, we just got to wait for the weather. That's where the real news is. Just wait for the weather. They can't mess that up. I used to laugh because they always put the weather at the end of the news report. I think they still do that. So that everyone would watch all the way through so we can get the weather. So
mhm.
I just remember Dad always saying, oh, that's a whole bunch of hooey. Wait till we get to the weather. Then you'll find the real news. I used to laugh at him. I don't know if you ever heard Dad say that.
I don't know. Yeah.
But yeah, for him, the only news was the weather. And that's it. I'm with him right now at this point in my life. I'm like, you know what? It's much easier. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
just tell me the weather.
Mhm.
I don't have to filter through all this stuff to figure out what's real and what's not real.
Yeah.
So yeah, so fake news. So wow, that can bring in a whole lot of other conversations. The way we just described it. So
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was thinking of, like, are these buzzwords or are these words created? I think from one angle, people might be creating it in order to try to help people better understand something, whereas other folks, and I'm not necessarily their intention, but it often causes division.
Yeah.
In I think trying to to create more explanation. Landa says, if you are interested, I use an app called Ground News, and it shows biases right or left and center. Oh, cool! I'd like to check
I'm going to
it
write
out.
that down. Ground News.
Ground News. I'll check that
It's an
out. Yeah.
app. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm going to write that down. So I'm going to check that out.
Thanks,
So
Landa.
yeah.
It might be nice just to, like, if it was all in one place, because I tend to
Yeah.
just, like, I'll watch like BBC, and then I'll watch Fox, and I'll watch CNN, and I'll watch MSNBC. I'll
MSNBC.
watch local news sometimes.
Yeah. I get overwhelmed by all of it, to be honest. I have so much things to do during my day. I got to be honest, I don't watch a lot of news.
Yeah, I don't either, but I feel like it almost feels like we have, like, I don't know, it almost feels like you have to have at least, I don't know, I go back and forth, but I feel like you need to know at least a little bit about what's going on in the
Oh,
world.
yeah. I agree with that. I think at the end of the night, we listen to the BBC or something on Alexa. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm kind of oblivious. I know what's happening in my own backyard. I know what's happening in my community, those kinds of things for sure every day. But some of these other things that are happening around the world, I don't listen to all that every day.
Right.
And not all because I think it's fake news, but it was just interesting that that has come up. And the way you described it just a little bit ago, I'm like, oh, fake news can come in all different types of things. You know, anything that I consume, I need to treat it like it could potentially be fake news. And how is it going to affect me as an individual, or the places that I want to be, and the characteristics I want to build up in myself? You know,
Mm-hmm.
fake news. I mean, that's got a big, broad connotation if we let it be.
Yeah. I mean, and the thought that there actually is like, because to me, I feel like maybe a lot of the news is more biased, not actually fake. But the idea that if there is fake news, like, that seems even scarier to me. That, like, if people are actually just making up stuff.
You know, it's so funny, and I get it. It's Hollywood, but I'm going to share it anyway. Because after all this started happening and we started hearing this term more and more, I started seeing that on some of these little shows that we like to watch for entertainment, that these lawyers are using these outlets to put fake stories up about people to get results to happen inside the courtrooms because everyone wants to participate. And I'm thinking, that's not so far fetched that someone can just get on some random place somewhere. And I can't even tell you how many times I'll get on and, oh, here's another one. Google it. We Google everything.
Yeah.
So I can get on and Google something and I find 10 different answers to the same question. So which one is the real answer?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same kind of thing, I think.
Right. At the end of the day, you still have to, like, just because we have access to more information doesn't mean that it's like, we still have to kind of filter it, and we still have to it still has to land in us in some way. I was watching a show, actually it was called Unorthodox. It's on Netflix. It's a series about I believe she was an Orthodox, or maybe she was Orthodox Jew, but she was Jewish, and she grew up in a very, like, small, very tight knit community, and she kind of, I guess it was like she kind of escaped it. But one of the things is that they didn't have access to internet, and so, like, Google or YouTube, like, those sorts of things they heard about, but they hadn't actually seen them. And so there's a part where like they get to kind of like, there's one where she's, like, at this public library, and she's sitting in front of the computer, and she's like, doesn't know what to do with it. And the person comes up and says, can I help you? And she's like, yeah, like, I don't know how to do this, or whatever. And he's like, well, it's Google. You just ask whatever question you want. And she's like, so is there a God? That was, like, her first question. And she's like, and then it comes up, and she's like, oh, and he's like, and look, there's all of these answers. He's like, so you still have to kind of, like, filter through and figure out what is the answer for you. But like, that's the thing about Google and all that, is that but I think, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. Do you have any buzzwords that you have? I have a few more here.
No, go for it. Shoot.
Okay. Well, here's another one that kind of goes along with. Oh well, I'm not going to do that one. How about this one? New normal. Do you hear that a lot? New normal.
New normal.
I actually heard someone saying to me the other day that they can't wait until we get to the new normal. What does that even mean? The new normal.
Aren't we in the new normal?
I don't know. Is there really a normal? I mean, I guess we each have our own little thing that we like to do every day, our own little, I don't know, schedule or whatever normalcy. But I'm sure my normal isn't the same as your normal.
Yeah. I think that's what they're saying, though, is getting back to kind of like our routine or whatever. But I hope we never go back to the way things were. There's so much about like our day to day that's impacted that I think has caused like me to question what it is I do for a living, how much time I spend on that, how much time I spend on a lot of things have really been brought into reflection. But I also think that we've come to see the world in all its, I want to say, ugliness. We haven't been able to hide from a lot of the truth that's been around us all along. And I don't want us to ever lose sight of that. Like, I don't want us to go back to seeing the world as we saw it before, and interact in it and be in it in the same way.
That's interesting. See, when I look around, I see a beautiful world with so much potential in it that if we as people could each do our part to our very best, that it could be even grander. And I don't want to go backwards for sure, but I want to continue to grow towards a deeper beauty and have it to be not just on the surface. So that's an interesting perspective.
Well, I think for that too, and I think that in a lot of ways we're in going in that direction. I think of having a better world for more people, but the reality of it, like for me, I feel like I'm somebody that's been pretty aware of racism, sexism, misogyny, like all of the inequalities in the world. And I have come to see them and come to understand them a lot more deeply, and to understand that I don't understand a lot of it. And that for me, the differences have become more obvious, and the differences not in a way that's hopefully will cause more separation, but will actually allow us to just see the difference in one another and still be in relationship with each other. And because of our differences, we will change in order to be with one another's differences rather than trying to just, focus on our sameness and making everything the same.
But yeah, I was going to say, it's those differences that make us beautiful. If we were all the same, how boring would that be if y'all looked like me? That'd be pretty lame.
I agree, but a lot of the world, you have to kind of leave your difference at the door, or like your difference it kind of separates you, or it has to be like not seen. And I think that's like the thing that's been really good, like using the term colorblind is not a good term to use, because what you're saying is you don't see my difference. You don't see that I have a different skin color, that I have. So because of that, I do have a different experience in the world. Doesn't necessarily have to mean it's better or worse, whatever. But
do you have to have a physical difference to have a different experience in the world?
No, there's a lot of different ways. That was just like one thing that kind of breaks up. But the thing of it is, it's not about saming our differences. It's not like just because we're all different, we're all the same. Right. It's being able to understand that we all are different and to be with one another's difference. Right. Rather than.
I just want to go back because I want to do this right. So if I've offended somebody, I want to apologize.
I'm not saying you did.
No, I'm just saying, not you, but maybe someone who's heard me talk, or even someone I know personally in my day-to-day life that I didn't realize. Because I have to be honest, when I look at my children and my grandchildren, I do not see color.
Right.
And my children are Black and Asian and white and Hispanic. But when I see them, I see my children, my grandchildren, my family. And so when I say I see beautiful men, I see beautiful women, I see beautiful people with potential in them that are going to impact the world in an amazing way. And I want to create a platform for them to do that. And so when I look at my girlfriends, I don't look at what color their skin is. I look at this beautiful woman that God's allowed me to have opportunity to do life with. And so if I've ever said that I don't see your color and you've been offended, please don't be offended. That is not my heart. I see people. I see beauty. I see potential. I'm not restricted by people's color. And if I've said that wrong and it's been offensive, I apologize. I would never want to be offensive.
I hear what you're saying, but also when you say that, for many folks who are of color, you're not acknowledging that their experience of their life because of their skin color.
Like, how am I not acknowledging it?
That's what they're hearing. That might not be what you're saying, but that's what they're saying. You don't fully see me because this thing that is a big part of me, you are dismissing. You are pushing it away in order to connect with me as a human instead of to really see my full experience. Does that make sense? So I think it's kind of like when people say all lives matter versus Black Lives Matters. Saying Black Lives Matter does not say that all lives don't matter. What it's saying is that Black Lives Matters, like Black lives matter, like because they're not treated in the same way. And like that's why it's important for us to say it in order to bring, because the reality of it is, if Black lives mattered in the same way that all lives mattered, there would be a lot more, I want to say equality is not the best term, but there would be a more even playing field and experience. People wouldn't be treated differently because of their skin color. They wouldn't be treated more hostilely by police. They wouldn't be dealing with being followed around in a store just because they're Black, because people might think they're stealing. We don't have the same fear of like getting pulled over as people of color do. We don't have the same fears. Maybe, we might have, I think in saying that, what people are feeling is like, you don't see me. It's kind of like if trying to think how you might relate to that understanding. But when you say that you're colorblind, people feel like you don't really see all of them, and then you don't really know them. Does that make sense?
Like I said, I apologize if I've offended people, because that was not my intention.
And it's not, and I think that's the part of it. It's not about, like, I think that's where it changes. It's like, I don't necessarily even like, and I'm not saying that I spoke to it well, and I don't necessarily have to understand that. But if I'm being told by somebody else, like, you're not really seeing me, and this is how I feel seen, these are the words you can say, these are the words.
But how do I know how people feel seen if I've not had an encounter with them?
Because they'll tell you. Hopefully they'll tell you, or there's also ways you can like Google it. You can Google and you can learn how people want to be referred to and connected with. And because it is a lot of emotional labor to ask somebody else. I mean, I think when you're in a close relationship with somebody, it's totally like, it's easy for that person to say, hey, you know what? That was racist, or that was sexist, or when you said that, I felt like you didn't see me as a trans person. Like, for you and I to have that sort of conversation, we can do that because we're in that sort of a relationship. But it can be much harder when you're just out in the world.
So I need to take on an extra, I don't know what to call it, an anxiety point for myself to interact with people publicly that I don't know. I mean, that's kind of how I'm seeing it. So I want to be politically correct. Is that what I'm hearing? So I need to understand how to interact with people that I don't have a relationship, so that they can't be offended.
It's being mindful. Like, it's just having kind of an awareness that how people may perceive you in that situation. For me, like, this was something that I remember, like, I moved to Chicago, and one of the reasons why I moved to Chicago was just because, I grew up in a fairly white community. There were some brown folks, but there weren't black folks. There weren't, there just wasn't a diversity of people. And one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Chicago was because I wanted to meet different people of different experiences. And what I learned when I got there was, one, like, I thought because I wanted to know and meet more people, then I should just be able to go and just hang out with people of different races and different experiences. And like I just have like some sort of like because I want to be there, I get to be there. But I realized that some people didn't want me there. And some people didn't want me there because I was white or because I was from a different community, which is totally fine. Like, there are places where we need to be more with people like us because we feel safe or like whatever. But like, me just thinking I get to take up space that's somebody else's in, like, that's the thing that I just had to become more mindful of, is that, oh, just because I want to be in all these places doesn't mean that these places necessarily want me in it. Or if I do go into it, how am I bringing myself into it? Like, I didn't realize how I didn't really realize what being white was either until I moved to Chicago as well, and I was around more people of color. And I learned that, like, because I grew up poor in a trailer, we didn't have a lot, like, we didn't have, like, in a lot of ways, I feel like my life was freaking hard, like, whatever, like those sorts of things. And I didn't have access to, a lot of different things. But because when I got there, people assumed that I had money. They assumed that I was educated and I had degrees. They assumed, a lot of like good things. Whereas, and for me, I was like, but I graduated high school. I don't have a college degree and I ain't got no money, like, that's not me, And so, like, there was definitely like this whatever, but those were like positive assumptions that people were making about me because of my skin color. People weren't like, oh, she's coming in, like, because I was white, that they were like saying that, like, I don't know, like, I stole things, or I came from this certain type of family or this certain type of way. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's when I started to realize that I had all these things put on me that were actually positive things. They weren't negative things. Now, once I came into being gay or was out as a queer person, then there were lots of like negative things put on me. How I was whatever, I was perverted, I was whatever, drug addicts, like whatever sort of like negative stuff that comes on me because now I'm a queer person or I'm an LGBTQ person. So I think that's kind of it's just having a mindfulness of how people are seeing you. So if I went into, for a while, I worked predominantly with Black and brown, young, gay, and trans people. I was sometimes the only white person in the room. I don't know why I did the quotes, but I was the only white person in the room. And I often, if I wasn't I was very mindful about the fact that I was in that space and like, should I be in this space? But also if I were to go into that space and be like, but but I am uneducated and I grew up in a trailer and like you get me, right? Like, we're like trying to connect in that way. I wouldn't have went anywhere. I had to really realize that, one, how they were seeing me, and then how I was seeing them. And like, I had my own um, perceptions of them as well that I had to really come to realize and understand as well. And most of those thoughts, if I was honest, was a lot more of the negative things than the positive things, because I had only been told what I saw on the news and maybe the way that I'd seen people portrayed in television. I remember, for instance, there was a bunch of police, there was a couple of instances. I think this was back like mid 2015 or 16. There were like 2 or 3 police shootings one right after the other. And I was in Chicago and I was working with these folks. And I was just coming to the awareness that Black people were feeling not safe with police. Like, it was one of the first times I'd ever really thought about it and seen it. And I was just like, horrified, and I could see and I felt like my community was rocked. Like they were like feeling it in their bones, and they were fearful, and they were like whatever. And I remember one, I think I had a lot more fear for them than they did at that point, because many of them had been dealing with it for so long. And I came to realize that because there was an older Black trans woman who was part of my crew, and I was really feeling for, like, I don't know, like I felt like she would be most impacted by the situation. And it wasn't to the same level, because it's become part of, unfortunately, part of the norm, is part of the world that they're used to living in. And so I feel like for me, that's like, I don't know where I was going with all that, but I had to start to realize that in order to understand other people and where they're coming from, I had to think about it from their end, rather than like I had to take my point of view out of it, regardless of what the other person said.
That's exactly right.
I could have debated with people about, no, like, you don't, like, I could have debated with them, but that wouldn't have got me anywhere. I needed to just.
I agree with that. You know, we need to allow people to be who they are. We need to allow people to share their story. We need to not put our opinions on other people. So I get that. I just didn't realize I couldn't just hug everybody when I came in the room. That's all.
It's one of the things that's really important to realize too is, like, when we talk about like they talk about like cultural like, I want to say culturally, like, but basically cultural humility is a good practice in the sense of realizing that people have different experiences. So part of the problem is that we have stereotypes on people already.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And so then we can come to know a group of people a little bit more. And so then we just have kind of a whole nother set of stereotypes. So it is really important that we don't just like put the same narrative on every person, but there are some similarities and there are some connective tissue, if you will, that can help us maybe navigate being in relationship with people that are different than us. However, it's very important that we don't make that assumption that because they're of this experience or that experience, that this is their experience and this is how they see the world, because that can change over time. And so I think we have to be mindful, but we also have to be open to the idea. And to some degree, it's getting to the space of we're all human, like, let's connect at the heart. But we have to realize that there's all this other stuff that can get in the way before we get to that heart that people are dealing with. Before you get to connect with their heart, you get to be human with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's not always intent. It's just how the impact, how is what we're doing impacting. And we're going to do it wrong, and it's going to be messy. And sometimes people are going to expect more from us than what we can give, or maybe even what we feel like is deserved. But I think for me, I'm just coming to realize, like, I can see that people are, I guess I just try to have empathy. And an understanding that I don't understand, and I won't understand some people's experiences to the and I have to stop saming my experience, because I used to say, well, I struggle, life is hard for me, so anyone else who has struggle in life, which most people do, then that somehow kind of like lessens the playing field. In which it is, and and there's more to it than just that. And so I think that's we're not all at that space. We're not all at that space where we can just be human with each other, because
you're right.
We're impacted by so much of the other parts of us. The world doesn't let us. The world doesn't just let us meet heart to heart, so to speak, yet. I mean, for me, that's what God is in my life, is that, or that's reaching for the divinity or for my spirituality, is to work to create a world in which we can see all this difference in everyone, and it doesn't matter, but it matters. And that we can just be with one another, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've talked a lot.
It's all good. It's good stuff. I'm glad for you to share that and give me some perspective, because I don't want to be disrespectful to people. I just want to love people.
Yeah.
You know me, I enjoy people. I enjoy engagement. I enjoy spending time with people and getting to know who they are. And I don't want to do anything to hinder that. So
yeah.
So cool. Good lesson on now that some of those areas we'll have to agree to disagree on, but it was a good conversation. Okay. Do you have any other ones? Buzzwords? I gotta.
Agree to disagree.
Oh yeah, agree to disagree. Well, and sometimes things. If it's not, I don't know. I don't want to. We can disagree and not agree with everything and still love each other and do life together. I you know, I'll have a hard time. I don't want to see people based on their color. I want to see people based on who they are as a person, and that includes their experiences. And I'm doing my best to be sensitive to those people who need me to say, I recognize the color of your skin, but I want to recognize people for how amazingly they are created with all of the challenges that they've experienced in life. Because at the end of the day, those challenges is what makes us who we are. It gives us the courage to take a stand when we need to. It gives us the courage to step back when we need to. It gives us the courage to step into a space where we may or may not be welcomed. It also gives us the courage to see the good in people and to recategorize people. So people see people of color and a lot of times in a negative light. That's not my experience. So I just don't see them in a negative light. If someone did something to me horribly, I would see that person in a negative light, but that doesn't matter what color their skin is. If someone runs up and pokes me in the nose, I don't care what color their skin is, I'm going to see them in a negative light. If someone, picks on one of my kids or my grandkids, no matter what color their skin is, I'm going to see them in a negative light. So
I guess
but I get what you're saying, and I appreciate that because I wasn't aware. Now I'm aware. So that gives me insight so that when I do encounter people that I don't necessarily know, that I can have a new level of sensitivity that hopefully I'll be able to find a place to engage them and love on them. That's
yeah.
the of my heart. So that's all. I just didn't have any perspective. But I don't want to see people by their skin color. That's my agree to disagree.
Well, and I think the challenge is it's like you can't disagree on somebody's experience. That's experience. So that's the only clarification I want to say is you can't disagree with somebody's experience.
You're exactly right.
Maybe we can disagree on, I don't know, the color of something, like the color of the car. I think it's violet, you think it's purple.
Yeah.
When somebody shares their experience with you, you can't disagree with it. Because
right. I don't disagree, but I don't take their experience for granted by the color of their skin either.
Right.
Just because someone's of color, I don't think they're automatically poor, grew up in a bad neighborhood, have been arrested by the police, because I don't think all that stuff. That could have happened to them for sure. But just because of the color of their skin, I don't assume that already.
Yeah.
I assume that they're a person living life the way I am. And if I get an opportunity to engage with them, then I want to understand who they are. And those are those things that are going to create who they are.
Well,
that's all I'm saying.
There's a lot of intersectionality as well. There's a lot of other things that kind of play into that. There's class.
Oh, I'm sure.
There's income, there's class, there's gender, there's so many other things. But the other thing that I still have racism is so ingrained into us that I still have racist thoughts, I guess, in the sense, or I could still feel, and sometimes I get really mad at myself, but if I'm honest, if I'm in a certain neighborhood, and part of it is also my transness, me being for all intents and purposes, people see me as a dude in ladies' clothes, I'm going to feel unsafe for a lot of reasons. and I'm not going to be safe. I'm going to feel more and more unsafe, probably because of how you look. And that could have to do with your gender. It could have to do with your age. It could have to do with what neighborhood we're in. It could potentially have to do with your skin color. As much as I would not want to believe that, I think that in certain situations and circumstances, those are things that come into play in some environments that cause me to react or respond to it in a different way, regardless of whether I want to. I have an awareness to know better. That it's just,
Where
I don't
did
know.
that awareness come from? Did it come from experience?
Yeah, it's came from my
Then
ability
I
to.
think that's valid. If it's coming from an experience that you've had, that's like us recognizing their experiences.
Oh,
And
you mean,
that's valid. Those
yeah,
fears.
but I think it's something that's been taught and told to us for so long, and like
Oh,
we're
so you
trying.
haven't had an experience. You've just been told that these things happen. That's different than
Well,
having an experience.
the reason why that experience is because the only experience I had of people of color or people not like myself was through media and through television. And those things, they were only, even like, if you want to talk about fake news or biased news, the stories that were being told of Black and brown people of me growing up were not the great stories. And if we
Right.
think about the news usually isn't all the good stuff anyway. But if
That's right.
everything that I know about a community is what I see on the news, that's not really seeing a full
Right.
breadth and experience of a person. And that's a lot of why, like, I do the work that I do around drag and spirituality. Is I want people to see that drag artists are still people. We have spirituality, we have all of these other facets to us, and it's the same. And I don't want to sameness, but that's a way that I can kind of explain it, in my understanding, that in order for people to see the fullness of all of us, we have to see more stories, and we have to get to have experiences with people differently. Because before that, before now, I mean, and now I'm much like, I have a completely different worldview, which I feel really grateful for. And I feel like the only reason why I have it is because I've been able to be in community with people very different from myself long enough, who allowed me grace, um, and were just in relationship with me, and caused me to see the world a lot differently than the way I saw it growing up. Yeah, we ended
Yeah,
up going.
I get that. Huh?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's all, that's all great. This gives me insight as to you, who you are, gives everyone else insight as to who you are and some of the things that you do, and me also. And we're all learning and growing together and understanding people and the things around us. So I think that's a great conversation. Thanks for sharing all those thoughts with us. That's amazing. So I don't know what to say. I was gonna ask a question. I'll just go ahead and ask it. We're coming close. So all of that stuff that you said is amazing, but where does God fit into any of that? That's what I was thinking, and I'm just going to say it out there because that's what I was thinking, and I wouldn't be being honest if I didn't share what I was thinking.
Well, to me, God, because I have God in my life, because God sees me and sees all of me, in order to be like, God, I need to see all of you. And I need to honor that, and I need to respect that, and I need to hold that, and I need to be with that with as much grace and care as possible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I believe, like, because of God, because of my relationship with God, I'm going to work to not be racist, to not be sexist, to not be afraid of people I don't need to be afraid of, you
Right.
know? Like,
Yeah.
but that's, and because I have a spiritual life and I have a spiritual walk, I get to be better at this than I was before God.
Yeah.
And before I had people in my life who showed me and told me, and you know so I feel like God's in all of it,
Yeah.
and to not see
I
all of it
agree.
is to not see God.
I think
And
that's
even,
good.
yeah, so it's like, that's the big thing of it. It's like, even if somebody, even if somebody's doing something the way that I wouldn't do it, doesn't mean I can't have appreciation and see it as valid and whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
I
we're all
agree.
at just like different parts of our life and our experience. I know we're running out on time.
God created us all to be different. So anyway, good conversation. I'm sorry we didn't give you guys much opportunity to throw some of your
Hopefully
buzzwords at us, but
they were listening. Maybe I don't know, something like I you know, and I don't have it all right, and I probably said some things that
it's all
probably could
good.
have been said
But
differently.
here's the thing: we're learning and we're having a conversation, and our desire is to connect, and we're willing to set our far rights, far lefts, far whatevers aside so that we can connect. And that's it. At the end of the day, the hope here is that we can connect and find a place where each one of us can continue on our journey and to be all that we've been created to be, right?
Yeah, we have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to be willing to be uncomfortable.
We have to be willing to what?
What we're doing is being willing to be uncomfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. And being vulnerable. You know, anyone at any time could shoot something back. You've experienced that already. That because they don't agree with you, it's really easy behind a screen to just shoot something crazy at you.
Yeah. One is you don't get to, and like I said, you don't get to disagree or agree on my life.
Right. Anyway, the buzzword for that is trolling, just so you know.
Right.
So we've been victims of that, both of us, for different things. So that's funny. Anyway, sorry, just I throw that in there.
All right. Well, hopefully, folks, we didn't scare everyone away. But yeah, so I guess we will just go ahead and. Is there any like parting? Let's just say.
I don't have any random thoughts or anything crazy to say. Okay. You know what? Actually, I do. I feel like all the things that we've been talking about is noise. It's noise that life gives us to hold us off balance and to make us think things that we shouldn't, which are their thickness. So I'm going to challenge everybody to monitor your noise. What kind of noise are you letting into your spirit? Is it something that's going to be honoring to everybody around you? Is it something that's going to be honoring to a few select? Be choosy about the noise you allow to come into your heart.
All right. Play that outro. Have a great week. We'll see you all next week.
See you guys next week.
If you have topic ideas or you have comments you want to share with us about our conversation today or anything, please, let us know. Maybe your topic we'll bring up next week. All right. Take care and bye-bye. Splintered Grace podcast is brought to you by a queer chaplain. Follow us on all of our social medias, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at A Queer Chaplain. Listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. Feel free to tip us at Venmo, Bonnie Violet, and support monthly on Patreon. The song is original by Steven Sandnoff, The Chasm Between Us. Rest in peace, Steven.